Don't wanna forget. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Java programming classes. It's long time we had our previous session, so due to some problems I had stopped up the classes, but we are back. So we hope we will be good now. Right, so the last topic that we left was like we were discussing about the Java programming basic stuff, loops, concepts, and if else conditions, switch case. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the object oriented programming stuff. Somewhere we have touched it in the previous classes also, but now today we are going to talk it in very details, like what are the different concepts, like what are the different features of object oriented programming, why we need oops, what are the things we have to take care when we are writing up the oops programs, right? So I'll be sharing up my screen now, and I hope it would be recorded and visible to all of the attendees. Right. Okay, so here we go. Right, so that's my screen now. We will go through all this stuff. Okay, so we'll start with to understand what exactly is object oriented programming structure, right? So when I say oops, in interviews sometimes they ask like what is oops, right? So first thing we should know is what is the meaning of oops, what do we call oops, right? So we call it as object oriented programming structure. Okay, so structure. Now this is a approach. This is not like you are not going to get some syntax, or you are not going to write any code specific to object oriented. Yeah, this is like you will get some code, some different type of code which you are doing in previous programmings like C language, but it's not like that. It's only Java that has the object oriented programming. Object oriented programming is the approach to write your code. Okay, so how are you going to manage it? You are going to write your code in a different approach, in a different way. So you would be writing up classes. Okay, you will write a class. So you can use classes to inherit your code for the reusability. You are going to encapsulate your code, right? You are going to use the encapsulation. You would be using up abstraction to uh, modify the behavior, right, at the runtime. So after that, we'll be using a polymorphism. How can I uh, bring the different type of behavior for a single entity, right? If I have a single entity, how can I bring different behavior to it? No, for now you would be finding out these questions as like very different kind of questions, not related to programming right now, but yes, they all are part of your coding itself, right? You would be writing up the code based on inheritance, encapsulation, abstraction, polymorphism. So let's start with the encapsulation stuff. Let's start with the encapsulation. Now, when I say encapsulation, the previous four topics that you have seen will be something which we are going to do in next few weeks. These are all the part of object oriented programming, right? So when I say object we have already studied that any entity, right? Any entity we are going to talk about will be a object. For example, a student, right? It is a object. We have to define this object by creating a class. So if I want to define object, if I want to define the object, I have to give a blueprint for it, right? What does an object looks like? So I'll define a class for that. So class student. Okay, so this class student is now separated from the rest of the code. All the student related stuff will go inside this class, right? It will have the variables, It will have the variables, the data, where we are going to store the data, right? Where we are going to store the data. It will have the methods for which I'll say like actions, what a student can do. Actions, what a student can do. Okay. And similarly, you can write more classes. For example, I can have a class course. So a student can enroll inside a course. So course can have some variables. For example, the course name, the course fee, course duration, right? And then the course method can be like enroll inside the course, okay, or change the course. So a student can change the course. So a lot of methods can be created inside the classes. Any number of methods can be created inside the classes. But the point is that if I go and create the classes, if I go and create classes and methods and variables, what is the benefit? It was good up till now. I was writing up all the code in a single notepad, right? For example, in the C language. So it was very good. Why I should create up these separate classes? So creating up the separate classes makes your code like isolated or separate from the different domain. For example, why will I mix the student code with the course code, right? Why should I mix it? So that's why I'm going to keep it separate inside my student class, course inside my course class, right? So this way we can keep them separate. And the benefit is like if suppose later I want to modify the student class only student code, I can come to student class and modify it. If I want to make changes in the courses, I don't have to change the whole program till date, right? I can simply go and change it in my course class only. Okay. So now when I talk about the encapsulation, encapsulation means to hide, right? Encapsulation. If I talk about simple book meaning, it is like to hide. You are hiding your code, right? So where are you hiding? From whom you are hiding it, right? So you are hiding it from the other parts of your code, right? Other code. So I say I'm writing up a student class. The content that the student class is containing, it's already different, separated from the other part of your code, right? It's separated from other part of your code. So this student class can contain a name. I can take a variable type name, right? Type string. The name of the variable is name of the student. I can take a string variable and I can call it as address. Okay. So now this class student has two attributes, name and address. So this is a blueprint of your student class, right? Student object. So now this class name and address can be used to save the data. The object can be created to save the data, right? But still these variables are open to the outer world. These are visible to the outer world, right? So they are visible. So to make them like, I have to hide them from the outer world, right? So it will be private. We'll keep them as private variables. Remember, whenever we have a variable, those variables need to be hidden from the outer world. When I say outer world means everything out of this class. So these variables will be hidden from it. So private string name, now these variables are not visible to the outer world. So how can someone access and save the value in it? How will someone access and save the value inside it, right? So how are we going to access it? We are going to access it using a separate method. So public void set name, right? I'll call it as public void set name. So this public void set name is going to take a value and set it inside your variable. So I will make a parameter also, public void set name. I'll say, okay, give me some name over here, right? Small case, lowercase, string name. So now I'll get a name and I can save it inside my instance variable. This dot name is equal to name. So that means you have a local variable here, local variable or an argument. So using this argument, you accept the value and then you set it inside the instance variable. These both are the instance variable, right? Because an instance would be created and they will have their reference inside the instance. Okay, so now both the variable would be created inside the instance. Fine. Right. Now I got this setter. This is called as a setter. We call it as a setter, or we call it as a mutator, right? You can set the value of the variable name. Now along with this, I want to read the value of name. So here I'll write public void get name, right? Get name. I want to read the data. So get name. So get name is not accepting up any argument, but it will return the value, right? It will return the value. So if it is returning the value, I cannot write it as void. So the type of value that you are going to return, because you are returning a string, so I have to keep it as a string. Now this is flexible. If you are returning up an integer value, you have to keep it as int, right? If you are returning up a character value, you have to write it as char. Okay, so this value which we are returning is name. So therefore my return type is a string, because the type of value that I'm returning is name, a string, right? So we are returning a string, therefore I have to declare my method as a string return type. Okay, so now we get the name, and here we get our output. Fine. So class student, private string name is my first attribute, private string address is second attribute, and so you have to also create getter and setter for our address also, right? So let's do it practically. Let's try to understand it practical way, not only the theory part, writing it on the whiteboard. We will do it practically. So I'll be taking up a new folder for today after a long time. It's around 1 month exactly. So 2020-12. So we'll go for today's date, that is 18. I believe it is 18. Yes. Sorry, it's 19. Okay, I'll change this. Rename. Here is the rename. Right, so we'll keep it as 19. Okay, so here inside this I'm going to write a new file, and I'll call it as encapsulation demo, right? .java. So let's create a class student. Okay, I create a class student, and I'm also going to create a class encapsulation demo. Okay, encapsulation demo. My encapsulation demo class will be the main class, because I'm going to write public static void main method inside it. So that make it a main class, right? I will run my program using encapsulation demo. I'll compile it using the encapsulation demo.java. I'll keep this class as a public class, right? Public class, my file name and the class name should be same. My file name and the class name should be same. Now, class student, as we discussed about object oriented, I think about a class student, class course, right? Class teacher. I can have so many number of classes, because I want to put the right code at the right place. The code related to the teacher, like accepting its details or paying out its salaries, right? All this stuff should go into the teacher class. If I'm showing up the list of the courses, all those should go into the course class. If I'm accepting up the registration of the student or listing out the students, all those stuff should go inside the student class, right? So now we are going to write some attributes of student class, right? These are just for example, course and teacher. Let's take the example of a student. I'll write a string variable name, right? String variable name. And now I want to make the object of the student class. So student is equal to new student. Create an instance. We have already seen how to create the instances in the previous sessions. So student object is created, and now I can access the variable name, and I can assign some value to it, right? Let's say test value, and try to print this value, system.out.println. So here we are going to print the value of, student, right? So when I say I have to print the value of a student is a variable which can further contain some more values, right? It contains name. If I write addresses also, it will contain all those stuff, right? So if you write only student, it may not give you any output. It will return the output of a reference. I don't want to see that reference. I want to see the name of the student, right? So now if you look at this code, if all things work, we can understand that name attribute is exposed. Name attribute is exposed to the outer world. Think this is a client, right? Encapsulation demo is a client who is accessing the name of the student, right? It creates a student and then it accesses the output value from it. So there is no control at your code. It is totally open. Everyone can access it, right? So let's try to run this code once. Right, I'll open up my terminal. We'll share here. So I have it in the trainings, Java, batch 10. Okay, so last we'll come to today's folder 2020-12. So compile it, Java C, and we have to give the file name. Compilation is good. Let me expand this a little bit. Right, so I will run my main class and it's running. It's printing the value of test. So it has saved the value and it is printing the value, isn't it? It has saved the value and is printing it also. So what I want is, I want that this encapsulation demo should not be able to access the variable directly, right? Due to some security concern. We'll discuss about those security concerns separately. I just want to control student class, that I don't want this student class to be accessed inside the encapsulation demo. Now someone can ask me like, okay, sir, this is written over here, encapsulation demo, they both are in the same program. Anyone can change this. See, the concern over here is because we are learning. So that's why I'm writing up all the classes in the same notepad. One. Second, suppose this whole thing is a separate library. Someone else has written and only given you the class files, right? If it has only given you the class file, that means encapsulation demo cannot make changes in those class file, right? So for that reason, we should always control our code that it should not be, the variables attribute should be private. They should not be accessible to the outer world. So now if you see, this student class was having its variable as private, and now if encapsulation demo is trying to access it, right? If it is trying to access it, see, it will give an error. It says private access in the student. You cannot access a variable who is having the private access, right? Someone is having the private access, you cannot access and then change the values or read the values. So for this, now you are going to create like a proxy method, right? A proxy method where you will have the control to see like what value is coming, whether I should save it inside my name variable or not, and what value should I return it. Maybe you want to change the value little bit. You can change it before returning it to the client. So I can write public void, right? Public void set, right? Set name. Now see, the name of your setter should always be in this template. Set the attribute name, set attribute name, right? So here you will accept a value of the same type. So you write a same variable name and then you can put it inside your instance variable. So this dot name is equal to name, right? And then I can write one more getter. So public string get name, right? And I'll return the name value. I'll return the name value. So private string name, public void set name, public void get name. Now, don't get confused over here after reading like few tutorials or blogs. See, the set name method may or may not return any value. Now, if you are going to create some chained kind of method, so yes, you can return the student class itself from here, and you can return this from here, right? You may have seen this kind of code. So when we will be trying to work on some project, I'll show you the implementation of this kind of code, right? So for now, I would suggest try to focus on the simple program, public void set name, public string get name, simple getter and setters, right? So now if I say encapsulation demo to send the value inside the setter, not inside the variable directly, right? So now he will use the student variable dot set name and we'll set the value inside this, right? We'll set the value inside this set name. So I can set the value, let's say John Doe, right? Now, what is the benefit of this? The benefit of setting the name through the setter is you have a control. Now you can check the variable over here, right? Though nowadays we have a lot of frameworks which help you in testing out all this stuff, putting up validations, etc. But in case if you want to write everything custom, so yes, you can do it this way. So if here we are going to write that name dot length. So length is a string function. So name dot length is equal to 0. So I'm going to say that this is a invalid value. So I can print system dot out dot print line invalid input for name, right? So you can print a message and you can exit your program. So system dot exit, right? Exit takes some integer value, you can give that integer value. So now if name dot length is equal to 0, invalid input for name, right? So let's compile this up once again. Java C encapsulation demo. Okay, I got another error, that is name has private access in a student. Why I am accessing this name? Because I was trying to display it. So here also you can see now you have an error, student dot get name. I can access it using again the getter, right? So save this, compile it. Good, we are good with compilation, everything is compiled. Now we can run our program and see the output. Oops, I compiled it again, I have to run this. So you can see it's printing John Doe. And you have also seen, like, if I'm setting the value, right, I can get a valid value. I can check it. Now think of a class where you wanted to save some date. So let's go over here. Think about you are making a calendar, right? I'm trying to make a calendar. So calendar class, and the calendar class can have a int day, int month, int year. So if any client, main is a client, right? Main is going to be a client. So if I say any client is going to create an object of your, I'll just bring the main class at the top, right? So that will help us to look at both the classes together. So now suppose if I make the object of the calendar class calendar, C1 is equal to new calendar, right? And now if you are trying to set the value of day, calendar day is equal to like 34, which is an invalid value, isn't it? So you cannot have a day as 34. C1 dot month is equal to let's say 13, which is an invalid value, right? So maybe by mistake, if someone was entering up the day and the month, he wanted to enter 13 in day and month in like 4. By mistake, clerical mistake, he entered 4 in the day and month as 30. So that's an error, right? So you don't have a control, like whatever value is being input, you have saved it inside the variables. And suppose if you keep it as private, you don't accept it here, it's okay, I'm not going to accept the values directly into my variables. I will keep a getter and setter method for you to enter the data in it. So sorry, not private, it should be public. I have a void, then set day, and here I'm going to take a int value, that is a day variable again, and I'll say this dot day is equal to day, right? Similarly, I'm going to write public int get day, right? So now I'll return a day over here. So the benefit is if you are getting up a invalid day, so let's take a generic condition over here, that if the day is greater than 31, right? And I should also look for the negative value. So I'll say if the day is less than 1 or the day is greater than 31, right? If either of the condition is met, I'm going to exit the program, system dot exit. But if you just exit, user may not know what is the problem, right? So you should tell system dot out dot print line that this is a invalid day. This is a invalid day. I hope this would be clear now, right? So let's try to run this code. Let's try to run this code once again. So C1 trying to set the day, not like this. I'll set it dot set day, right? Set day. So 13. Okay, let's comment the rest of the code. We are not going to print whole of the calendar. Calendar C1 is equal to new calendar. C1 dot set day is 13. So let's see if the 13 is accepted or not. Set day, I think 13 would be good. We go and write like 34. So set day is 34. So if it is greater than 31, it is invalid day, right? So let's go and compile this program. So again, come back to the compiler. Compilation is good because this is not a syntax error, right? So try to run this code. So it prints this is an invalid day, right? You can take that value, you can display to the client that this is an invalid date. Okay, so this is how we are going to implement the encapsulation in our program. Take a rule that always keep the attributes of your classes private. So they should not be accessible directly, right? And then make your getters and setters. Using the getter and setter, you have some control in your program. I mean, for your attributes, that you can check the values that are being input. Even you can manipulate it. You can like sanitize them. Suppose if that value is containing some blank spaces. So before setting it, for example, in this name, before setting it inside here, you can even trim the spaces, right? So name dot trim. So you can use a trim function to trim up all the spaces from front and the starting and the ending, front and the back of the name value, right? So this would be good if it would be good if you have some control on the attributes. You can sanitize the inputs and then save it inside the database, right? Saving the value inside the database always gives a security concern, so that the client is not sending the invalid data or kind of some like injections into your code. When you say injections, means some JavaScript kind of code which can go to your database, and then later on when opened in a browser, right, it can run the script. JavaScript runs in the browser, so it can run the script and then can like hijack up all your application stuff, or can give the control to some other like people who can hijack up your values, right? So hack your values, not hijack. So fine. So I believe now you would be good with understanding of what is encapsulation, right? So I think I have joined after a long time. Many students have not been online today, so we'll be joining up again tomorrow on the same time. So we'll understand up only encapsulation for today, and let's join tomorrow once again, same time, right? So everyone, I'll be sending up the link out for tomorrow's session also, and today's session, whatever we have recorded. So great, it was nice. After a long time, I've gone online and resumed up my classes, right? So have a great weekend. Thank you. Bye everyone.